All right, let's continue with our introduction by talking about the transition into law school, your time management journey through law school, and then the transition from practice into law school. In other words, we're going to talk about what time management struggles look like and why time management skills are so important as you come into law school and as you work your way through law school, and then what those struggles look like as you transition into practice and why time management skills are so important as you transition into practice. So, first, transitioning into law school. When you come into the law school setting, typically you suddenly have more control. In other words, you are doing more on your own. For example, you're more likely to have one final exam, or maybe in law school, some law school classes, just a few tests or exams. In other words, there are fewer checkpoints along the way. There is less leading you through a class bit by bit. You're now much more responsible for your own learning and development versus what people tend to see in their academic careers up until that point. Things are just less broken down for you. There's much less leading you along. You're doing a lot more to put things together on your own. So, for example, you're often typically expected to come to your law school class already having done a lot of work to understand the material. So, that requires you to be in charge of time management in a way that may not have happened for you before law school, in your previous academic experience when things were much more broken down for you already. So now you need to figure out what to do and how to get it done. And often this responsibility comes without anyone ever really teaching us solid time management strategies so that you can actually carry that forward and rise to that challenge. Now, let's talk about the transition to practice after law school. So, I see two issues with the students I work with that are in the end of their law school career and getting ready to transition into practice. This would also apply as you're working in internships or different externships over the summers in between law school semesters. So, this arises in two main ways, and I see this in the clinical setting all the time as my students are getting a taste of what practice is going to look like. So, one is now comparing what practice will be like, and this is what experiential education gives you a taste of, versus your law school experience so far, you tend to have more changes and less predictability. So, what do I mean by that? When you're working in practice or in an experiential setting like a clinic, things change because we're now dealing with the real world and real clients, right? In other words, we can't predict like a normal class at the start of the semester. This is what was going to happen every day. This is what you're going to be responsible for every week. These are the pages you need to read. Things are not that concrete. There's less predictability and things are going to change. That requires stronger time management skills and more flexibility. That's one. The second part is there are now more moving parts. So in addition to things changing and being less predictable, there are now moving parts, right? It's more like practice. And so even if you had time management skills before that you felt comfortable with in your law school career up until this point, it's different now. So you need to evolve and grow your time management abilities. In other words, what worked before probably isn't going to cut it anymore. You need to evolve. So, for example, when you're in a law school class, depending on the class, you may be studying and building outlines, taking exams, talking about things in class. You may have study groups. In other classes, you may have papers or legal analysis or written projects or other projects that you're responsible for. In a clinical setting or in practice, suddenly there's even more. There's client interactions and interviewing and counseling. Sometimes there's a reading and a class component. There are other projects that are due. You're now responsible for all the different pieces that come along with practice, like timekeeping and filing. When you're in practice, there's also marketing and there's business development as well. There's all the pieces of working with a client, engagement letters and drafting emails and communication and phone calls, and all the different parts of substantive work like drafting different documents and research. So there's so many more moving parts, right? So again, two issues as you develop from law school to practice. More changes and less predictability is one challenge. And the second challenge is more moving parts. Hence the need for your time management strategy to evolve through law school as you head into practice. Now let's talk about the keys to time management success. There are many, but I want to talk about three that you should know right now because you should carry these with you through this guide to help see success in using this guide and building your time management foundation. So, one is I see this all the time with people that I coach. Perfect is not the goal, right? The idea is not to have a perfect time management strategy. Sometimes people get too caught up in having everything perfectly curated and developed and executed, and that can get in the way of success. So you're looking for what works for you and gives you results, but the idea of having something that's perfect all the time is not really what's going to move you forward. So that's one. Perfect is not the goal. Two is you need to reflect and improve and adjust. We'll talk more about this, especially at the end. In other words, it's not that you can just implement one sweeping change and then you're good to go. You need to constantly reflect and improve and adjust and evolve your time management skills. And we'll talk about how to do that. And then the third thing you should know right away is that it's typically the small steps that are going to get you the big results. Again, not those big sweeping changes. Sometimes people just think if they can willpower their way through fixing everything at once, they'll see success and it'll be faster. But actually, that is hard to maintain. And then it's actually more of a struggle to see success. So, for example, I was coaching a professional who told me when we were dealing with this issue, she had children and decided that, starting on Monday, she was going to only serve her children home cooked from scratch meals without preservatives for the rest of their lives. And I asked her how that went. And she said it lasted until about Wednesday, right? She tried to make this massive sweeping change just because she wanted to will it into existence. And it wasn't sustainable. It lasted 2 days. What usually works are smaller changes over time. And so I want you to focus on that. So transitioning here, let's talk about how to use this resource. So look at the overview so you have a sense of where we're going. And let me walk you through where we're going. So after we finish this intro, I'm going to walk you through some time management basics, right? So what are basic time management strategies? That's where we're going next. Then from there, we will move on to skills to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of your time management. So what skills do you need to really see success in your time management strategies? From that point on, we'll talk about troubleshooting time management issues, primarily dealing with distractions and procrastination that so often hold us back. From there, we're going to talk about understanding your brain a little bit more, drawing on some psychology and neuroscience so that you can better understand the characteristics of the human brain that are going to impact effective time management. And then from there, we're going to talk about how to keep this skill going as you move forward. So, you can look at the overview and have a sense of where we're going. Now, it's okay to listen to this whole guide, to listen to the whole thing in a row or over time to get a sense of the big picture and where we're going. But I strongly caution you against trying to implement everything I'm teaching you here right away. Again, small steps get you big results. And so trying to listen to the whole thing and immediately implement is likely to get in the way of your success and slow you down, not help you see results faster. So go through in order and along the way, find where you are in your own time management journey and pick a few changes at a time to implement. After each recording, or pause during each recording, actually stop and reflect on how what you're learning in that section applies to you right now and what shifts you might need to make. Don't plan to make all potential shifts at once. Just start putting those building blocks in place. And then when they're strong, your foundation will be able to support more changes. It's a bit of an experiment. I encourage you to experiment in what works for you. So it's going to take a bit of time to get a strong time management foundation. But if you keep taking those strong, small steps forward, gathering small building blocks at a time, you will build a strong foundation and ultimately see much faster, much more stable progress that you can build on for the rest of your life. Okay, let's dig in.